Hello, my lovely people. It is Sunday, March 22nd, and usually I would be doing a live session with you all, but I have a family dinner I need to go to. So I'm doing this recording. It is math only. So, I know we requested some math. I wanted to do this math for you. I will be back next Wednesday, next Sunday. This just happened last minute, and I don't want to miss out because family is family. So we're going to do these 10 math problems, and if you have any questions, you all know you can email me at CandiceEllis@gmail.com. So hopefully this math session helps you. Again, if you have questions or something you were just dying to tell me, email me. Otherwise, let's get to it. Number 1. A buyer is obtaining a $260,000 loan and the lender charges 2.5 discount points. How much will the buyer pay in discount points? All right, so what do we know about points? What we know is that 1 point is equal to 1% of the loan amount. Now, this is a cost. You will be asked to pay points for different reasons, and each point, 1 point, will cost you 1% of the loan amount. So if we've got 2.5 points, that would be equal to 2.5%. So if we're looking for 2.5 points, we know it's 2.5%. So a $260,000 loan times 2.5%, that's going to give me $6,250. Right? So 260,000 times 2.5% is $6,250. That is our final answer. Now, just as a reminder, I encourage you to use the percentage sign on your calculator. But if you're not comfortable with that, or if your calculator doesn't have one, if you have to take a decimal to a percentage or a percentage to a decimal, just remember Dr. Pepper. And what that is DP. If you're going from a decimal to a percentage, we see there's 2 letters here. So decimal to percentage, we're going to the right. So if I had, let's just make up a number. Let's say I had 0.437. If I'm going from a decimal to a percentage, I'm going 1, 2. There's 2 letters. I'm going to move this decimal 1, 2 to the right. So that would be 43.7%. Right? Now, let's say I was going from a percentage to a decimal. Well, again, all right, got DP. Don't really need those little dots there, just have it. So this time we're going from a percentage P to a decimal. Again, there's 2 letters. So if I had a percentage, let's say it was 86.5%. Well, I'm going to the left this time, 2 places, so that would be 0.865. That's how you go from a decimal to a percentage, in case you've forgotten. But hopefully that helps, and we're going to move on to number 2. A property appraises for $340,000, and the purchase price is $350,000. If the lender offers an 80% loan-to-value ratio, what is the maximum loan amount? Sometimes, especially when I'm doing math on my own, I like to write out what the letters are all about. So I like to say $340,000 is the appraised value, And $350,000 is our sales or contract price. And I know 80% is our loan to value, otherwise known as the LTV. What that LTV is saying is, hey, the bank is going to give you 80% of the value of the property. This buyer is going to buy a house, and the bank is saying, look, we're not going to give you every single dollar you need. You are going to have to put down some amount of money. In this instance, they want them to put down 20% of the value, right? 20% of the value, and then they'll give you the money for 80%. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the maximum loan amount. Well, they're buying the house for $350,000, but an appraiser came through and said, hey, this thing is only worth $340,000. As far as the bank is concerned, they will give you the 80% of the lower number. You might get math problems where the sales price is lower or the appraised value is lower. Go with the lower number, right? So $340,000 is our lower number. As far as the bank is concerned, this property is worth $340,000. So what are we going to do? We're going to find 80% of that. So $340,000 times 80%. That's going to give me $272,000. This is the answer to our problem. However, I just want to put this into real life for you. In real life, if you are the agent and your buyer is buying a house for $350,000 and there's no type of appraisal contingency or something like that, that means the seller is expecting $350,000. That's the sales price. If they're getting a loan for $272,000, so this is what they need. This is what the loan is for. The difference is going to be the down payment. So I'm going to do $350,000 minus $272,000. That would be $78,000. That would be their down payment, just talking about what they need, the difference between the sales price and the loan. We haven't even included any of the other types of closing costs there. So this has to do with loan contingencies. As you go into real estate, especially residential real estate, you need to figure out, hey, does this offer need to have a loan contingency? Something that says, dear seller, if the house doesn't appraise, then what happens? If the house doesn't appraise, can I walk away? Are you going to lower the price? All of this gets tied together in real life, the things that you're learning in this class. All right, let's move on to number 3. Annual property taxes of $4,380 have been paid in full by the seller. Oh, that is important. They have been paid in full by the seller. The closing date is September 15th, and the buyer is responsible for the day of closing. Using a 365-day year, how much will the buyer owe the seller at closing for the tax proration? Oh my gosh, you all know you're going to get these tax proration problems, so let's do it. I like to go in and draw a timeline. So this timeline represents a whole year. So let's say it's 2026. We know that this would be 1/1, and we know this is going to be 12/31 because it says there's a 365-day year. And these taxes have been paid in full by the seller. The seller paid all of this $4,380. Seller paid all. Now, does that seem fair to you? We know this closing is September 15th. Let's say it's right here. September 15th. So that means from, go here to here is what the buyer, those are the dates that the buyer owns his property. And from here to here are the dates that the seller owns the property. Yet the seller paid for everything. No bueno. What are we going to do? We're going to prorate. Prorate just means we're going to split it up. Right? The seller doesn't need to pay anything else. They've already paid for the full year. What needs to happen is the buyer owes money to the seller, which means it's going to be a buyer debit, because you know debit means you owe, and it's going to be a seller credit. I know that's going to be our answer. Now let's figure out the math. Well, if the closing day belongs to the buyer, that's what it says here, then that means the buyer is responsible for 9/15 through all the way through 12/31. 9/15 through 12/31. So we got September, October, November, December, 31 days in December, 30 days in November. We got 31 days in October. Now we've got to talk about the 15th. If it's 9/15, that means it's the 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Oh, did you see that? That is 16 days. Use your fingers and toes. If you have toes and fingers, just assuming. But when you include the 15th, again, if you count it out, it's the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 16 days. Don't fall for the, it's 15 days. Nope, it's 16 days. So when we add all of that together, we've got 16 plus 31 plus 30 plus 31. That gives us 108 days. That's how many days that this buyer needs to reimburse the seller for. Now, if only we knew a daily amount, we can figure that out. If the year is 4,380, that's 365 days, I can divide by 365 to find a daily. So I'm going to do 4380 divided by 365, and that gives me 12. That is $12 a day. So if I know it's 108 days times $12 a day, that's going to give me a total of 12 times 108. I've got $1,296. That's our final answer. All right, next problem. A seller wants to net $85,000 after paying off a mortgage balance of $120,000, a 5% commission, and $3,500 in closing costs. What is the minimum sales price needed? And they want us to round to the nearest dollar. Okay, so what we know is that the seller wants to, when they sell this house, there's a certain amount of money they need. They're going to need that $85,000 because when we say they want to net that money, that's, I want to walk away with this in my pocket money. And they need to pay off a loan of $120,000. And we've got the $3,500. That's a loan payoff. And then we've got these closing costs. Now you might be saying, hey Candace, why did we skip the 5% commission? Because all of these are dollar signs And that's a 5% commission, so I'm going to leave it to the side right now. All right. We know these are the dollar amounts this seller needs, so I'm going to add it. $85,000 plus $120,000 plus $3,500. That gives me $208,500. Altogether, that is what the seller needs just without paying a commission. This is needs without the commission. So if this seller were to sell the home for $208,500, this would not be enough money because you didn't pay yourself. If the seller was doing a for sale by owner and was not paying out any type of commissions, then yes, $208,500 would be enough. But it's not enough. This seller needs the $208,500 plus whatever 5% of the final price is. Right? And then that's going to give us our minimum sales price. So this minimum sales price is 100% of what the seller needs. At the end of the day, the minimum sales price is 100% of what the seller needs. So if we were to look at it this way, $208,500 plus 5% equals 100%. Well, then if this is 100% and this is 5%, we know this number has to be 95%. That $208,500 doesn't represent 100% of what the seller needs. It represents 95% of what the seller needs. Right? If we were to put this number by itself, if we were to simplify, you know you would subtract the 5% here, and you would subtract the 5% here, and you would get that $208,500 is 95% of what the seller needs. So what am I going to do? We're going to squeeze this in. We're going to take that number. We're going to say $208,500 divided by 95. And what that's going to give me is $219,473.68. But that's not our final answer because they asked us to round to the nearest dollar. So my real final answer is going to be $219,474. There we go. This is our final answer. Yay! Now, one thing you can do is whenever you see this word net and, what is the minimum sales price needed, that's when you can remember, oh, I got to do that 100% minus the commission thing, and that's how I do it. Right? Hopefully this helps. I know a lot of students get tripped up with this one, but just look for this net word and this minimum sales price needed, and you can do it that way. All right, number 5. A seller has a mortgage balance of $142,500 at 7% interest. The monthly payment is $948.72. How much of the first monthly payment is applied to principal? Whenever I see these problems, I like to lay out a little mini amortization schedule showing, okay, this is the payment, here's how much it goes to principal, here's how much it goes to interest, and here's my new balance. So we know we have a balance of $142,500. That's our original balance. Well, you're going to make a P&I payment of $948.72. Part of that's going to be interest, Part of that is going to be principal. And then whatever that principal amount is, that's going to give you your new balance. All right, so let's do some math. We know that there's 7% annual interest, which means if you were to borrow $142,500 for one complete year, you didn't make any payments, you were just going to pay back the interest after 1 year, it would be at 7%. So 7% of 142.5 is $9,975. That's a year of interest. That's a year. But in this case, we're talking about a month. Only a month has gone by. I am not paying the bank $9,000, almost $10,000, because I borrowed money for a month. So I'm going to take that $9,975 and divide it by 12. Because if it's a year, we know we have 12 months in the year. And that's going to give me $831.25. That's 1 month of interest. So I know even though I made a payment, a P&I payment of $948.72, $831.25 went towards interest. So if $948.72 is principal and interest, and of that, the interest is $831.25, then I can do a little math. And that should give me $117.47. Right? That means of that amount, $117.47 would be the principal. That's what gets applied to the principal. So your new balance would be this $142,500 minus $117.47. So that would be $142,382.53. Now, that's not what the problem asked us. It literally asked us how much of the first monthly payment is applied towards the principal. That's this answer right here. Our answer would be the $117.47. Once again, we've got another problem right. Okay. Number 6. A borrower has a loan balance of $185,000. The annual interest rate is 6%, and the monthly payment is $1,109.16. After making one monthly payment, what is the remaining loan balance? Just like the problem we just did. We know we have an original balance. There'll be a P&I payment. Some of that will go towards interest. Some of that will go towards principal. And the remaining will be, when you subtract that out, it comes off the new balance. There we go. So, yeah, my inability to draw a straight line is kind of scary. All right, so change colors here. Boom. We know there is a loan balance of, if I can get my pen to work, $185,000. And it is at 6% annual interest. So 185 times 6% would give me a total annual or year of interest. So 185 times 6%, that is $11,100 for the year. And I'm going to divide that by 12. One too many zeros there. Oop. it gave me $925. So I know that our P&I balance, or what we pay every month in P&I, is $1,109.16. And we just figured out $925 of that is interest. So I can do the math. $1,109.16 subtract $925. That's going to give me $184.16. Right? We've got $184.16 going towards principal, which means our new balance would be the $185. Subtract the $184.16. So that gives me a new balance of $184,815.84. Hey, this is our final answer because the problem asked us, what's the remaining loan balance? What's our new balance? So we've seen two different problems tackle the same kind of topic. You need to know how to do this. Let's move on to our next one. Ooh, area. A farmer owns a parcel that is 660 feet by 1,320 feet. How many acres does the parcel contain? Whenever I see problems like this, I like to draw it out. So I got a parcel that is 660 feet by 1,320 feet. Remember, usually the first number is going to be the width, how wide it is from here to here, and the second number is going to be how deep it is. So it's going to be 660 feet by 1,320 feet. So we know area is equal to the width times the depth, or length times width. And so that means our area is going to be 660 feet by 1,320 feet. And that's going to give me a total area of 871,200 square feet. Well, if I know there's 43,560 square feet in an acre, I can take that 871,200, divide it by the 43,560, and I get 20 acres. That is our final answer. Love that for us. Okay, let's do number 8. Another area problem. So once again, I'm going to draw this out. A lot is shaped like a right triangle with a base of 120 and a height of 90 feet. So this is a right triangle. The base is 120 feet. The height is 90 feet. Now we know that when it's area of a triangle, of a right triangle, it is the base times the height, and then you're going to divide that by 2. Right? Now, let's finish reading the problem. My bad. If the owner wants to install sod at $45 per square foot, what will the total cost be? All right. We need to know what the square footage is of this thing. So I can do the 90 feet. Actually, that's not our base. I'll put it in the right order. Our base is 120 feet times 90 feet. And then whatever that is, we're going to divide it by 2. So 120 times 90 gives me 10,800. And I'm going to divide that by 2. That gives me 5,400 square feet. That's the square footage, but it's 45 cents per square foot. So I'm going to do the 5,400 square feet times 0.45, because that's 45 cents. And that's going to give me an answer of $2,430. That's how much the sod would cost, because it's 45 cents per square foot. I guarantee you this will be an answer choice, but it's going to be the wrong answer. Don't stop there just because you saw it as A, B, C, or D. It is looking for the total cost, and that would be the $2,430. Okay, so let's do our next problem here. An investor wants to earn a 9% annual return or capitalization rate on a property that generates $36,000 in net operating income per year. What is the maximum sales price that the investor should pay? Right? Now, these NOI problems are great. I love NOI problems, and I think this is a great time to use for NOI. If for nothing else, you use a T-bar. You know a T-bar is going to be, hopes if I do it right. Got a T-bar here. And if you take the NOI and you divide it by the cap rate, you'll get value. Why do I say the T-bar is great in this instance? Because a lot of you all struggle with, hey, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to multiply or divide? Really, you could say the value times the cap rate equals NOI. Right? You could write it out that way, but a lot of times they'll tell you, oh, to find the value, if you're looking for value, then what you have to do is you've got to take the NOI and divide it by the cap rate. It's the same formula, you're just kind of going back and forth. Well, if you know that in a T-bar, if you get a top and a bottom number, you divide. But if you get two bottom numbers, you multiply. You don't have to try to remember how to do this formula. You just stick in the numbers where it goes. So in this case, I'm going to make my T-bar. And I know that our 9% annual return is our cap rate on a property that generates $36,000 in net operating income. It tells me I'm going to divide. I'm going to take 36,000 divided by 9%. And that's going to give me a final answer of a value of $400,000. That's our final answer right here. You can use the formulas. You can use a T-bar, whichever works for you, but find a way. Don't get scared because you see the letters NOI and cap rate. It's really easy. NOI divided by cap rate equals value, or your value times your cap rate equals the NOI. Let's do one more. A property sold for $520,000 and produces a net operating income of $41,600 per year. What is the capitalization rate? So this time we're looking for the cap rate. We know if you take the cap rate and you multiply it by the value, you're going to get NOI. Well, this time it's asking us to find the cap rate. So that means I could take this and I could say NOI divided by value equals the cap rate. Or I could just say NOI, I can do the cap rate times the value. And I know I'll either divide or I'll multiply. So it's telling us that the property sold for $520,000. That's the value. So if I were to put that in T-bar, 520,000 goes here and produces a net operating income that goes up here, 41,600. I'm going to divide, and that's going to give me an answer. Or I could say, hey, my NOI is 41,600. I'm dividing it by the value, $520,000. Look, my math is exactly the same. I'm going to get a cap rate. So $41,600. And I'm going to divide it by $520,000. Gives me 0.08, which is going to be 8%. This gives me 8% because we know 0.08, our Dr. Pepper, right, we're moving that decimal 2 to the right, that's 8%. That is our final answer, and we love it. Yay! So guys, I'm sorry, like I said, I just need to spend time with my family. Hopefully this is valuable to you and this helps. I will see you Wednesday at 7 p.m. I will be live again. And next Sunday at 5 p.m. You know, you only have one family, guys. This is important, but it's not life or death, and it's not family. So I'll see y'all next time. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, that's Candace Ellis at Gmail. See you next time.